So on kites, remember the diagonals are perpendicular. So that means that these two intersect at a what? A 90-degree angle. And exactly one pair of opposite angles is congruent. And there is another thing. Your top two sides are congruent and your bottom two sides are congruent. So top two sides, Blair, congruent, and your bottom two sides are congruent. So that means that we need to put what on the top two sides?
One tickie.
Tickies. And on the bottom?
Two tickies.
Two tickies. And what do the tickies mean? And what does the word congruent mean? That they're equal or the same. Good. So I'm going to call this A. What do y'all want to call the next one?
K.
And then?
E. L.
Of course you do.
L.
I just put it up there. It sounded like you said E. But with your sassy attitude, I'm not going to put anything in the middle. Boom. How you like it now?
Was that like a square?
Yep. Square.
AKL square.
AKLJ square.
My bad.
Alright, so AK is congruent to LK. JA is congruent to JL. And what do we know about this middle angle? It's 90 degrees. So K square L is 90. What about K square A? What about J square A? What about J square L? Look at us go. Ready to look at the bottom? This says find the measure of JRK. Where is JRK? Let's highlight it just in case we can't see it. Now, those are two diagonals. And what do we know based on the characteristics at the top about the diagonals of a kite? They intersect at a 90-degree angle. Both of you take a point. So what's the measure of JRK? Is it in magic? Now, this tells us that GHJ is 90. So that means this entire angle is 90 degrees. And it tells us that GKJ is 110. Now, what do we know about one pair of opposite angles? Are GHJ and GKJ congruent? So which ones have to be congruent? The top and bottom are not congruent, correct?
Yes.
Which ones are congruent? Yep. So if they're congruent and we don't know what they are, what could we call them? A and A, because they're congruent. Thank you. Take a point. So how would we find those measures? What would we set this equal to when we add it up? We did an example just like this right here. All you have to do is look back at your notes and pay attention. And why do we set it equal to 360? Because it's a quadrilateral. So since we don't know what these are, our three rainbows, we're going to call them A. So it's A plus 90 plus 110 equals 360. How many of us did that correctly last night? Look at you two go. Are you just stretching or are you saying you did it correctly?
I did it correctly.
Okay, good. Take a point, both of you. Alright, finish solving it without me.
It's an A plus A.
Yes. It's just my brain. What's A plus A?
2A.
Why are some of us not working? Are we done or are we just sitting there waiting on me to write it on the board? What did we get for A? 80. Yes. That's okay, Tater. Okay, so A plus A is 2A, correct? And 90 plus 110 is 200, correct?
Oh, okay. Never mind. I put 180.
And then you subtract 200, and you get 160. And then you cut 160 in half because you have to divide it by 2, and you get 80.
Alright. That was good. Come on. I put it at 180. I wasn't thinking.
Put 180 for 100.
Oh, I'm tripping.
I still don't think he's writing the right thing.
Did I write it on the right column?
What is happening? Okay. Alright, now the last one says, if HJ is 7, what is HG? How do you know that? Look at us go. Take a point. How do we feel about kites? How do we feel about trapezoids? We feel about trapezoids? Curtis, today, son. Today. Okay. Are you ready? Alright, now, I want us to look at the board. I want you to watch me work out this problem about trapezoids without my notes, because it's magic. Alright, this tells me this is an isosceles trapezoid with bases A, B, and DC. What do we know about A, B, and DC? No, they are not congruent. Parallel.
Don't listen to me.
We weren't. Now, this is our median, or our mid-segment. And we know that to find mid-segment EF, we have to add AB and DC together and divide it by 2. Now, what information does it give us here? Alright, so we have 10 equals, what? Tell me what's right now. Alright, how do we get rid of that fraction? Good. And I get 20 equals AB plus 14. Then what do I do? So what does AB equal? Isn't that easy peasy lemon squeezy? Fantastic. Now, what do we know about isosceles trapezoids? We know that AD is congruent to BC, which means what about the angles? Which ones are congruent? So, ADC is congruent to? Alright, and then it tells us to find ACD if BCD is 65. So it equals 65. Look at us go. Do we feel better? Do we feel like we want to bang our... That's okay. We can go back and fix it on our others. Okay.
Okay. Different on these, like the 2x plus 1
Mhm.
is harder.
Mhm.
How do I do that?
If this was 2x plus 1, tell me what it says.
2x plus 1.
What, baby? What part?
EF equals 2x plus 1.
Okay. And?
B equals 8. BC equals 3x minus
3x minus.
3.
Okay. Alright, so this is the problem that we have now. And I'm going to rewrite it here because I'm out of room. Alright, so we have now that AB Alright, AB is 8, you say? And EF is 2x plus 1. And DC is 3x minus 3. Alright, we are still going to use the same formula. So we're still going to use the formula of EF equals AB plus DC divided by 2. Alright? EF is 2x plus 1. AB is 8. And 3x minus 3 divided by 2. How do we get rid of the 2? Multiply both sides by 2. Now I have to multiply everything on the left by 2. So what am I going to do here to get rid of my parentheses? 4x plus 2. Distribute. And those cancel. And I'm left with 8 plus 3x minus 3. Okay? What is 8 minus 3? And then what do I do?
You subtract 2 from that side. And x equals 3. Yes, yes,
Now, did it ask me to find x, EF, or DC?
yeah.
EF. So if I know what x is, what do I put right here?
You plug it in.
I plug in 3. And what's 2 times 3? And what's 6 plus 1? So are we still doing the same thing even though we have an x in there?
Yes.
Do we feel a little better? A little bit? Okay. Now, you see the sheet that has all the different shapes on it with the scrolly thingy at the top. This sheet right here. I want you to write my quadrilateral sheet. And this is going to be our review sheet for our quadrilateral so that we can make sure that we're ready for our test, which is going to be when? Friday.
This Friday, okay.
What do you think, baby?
Okay, when do we get a study for it? It's a better question.
Today.
We're making our
We're making our review sheet. Are we ready? So what do you... Okay. What do you think we're going to write on this sheet?
quadrilaterals.
Probably like
Just crash the bus. We done. There's no hope for the future. They need to go ahead and send that asteroid. Okay, let's try again. What do you think we're going to write on this sheet? Stop it, Drake. You are the reason we are crashing the bus, son. Our rules, our properties, maybe stuff to help us on our test, maybe things that we know about rectangles. What? They're already on there.
I'm losing IQ points.
Me too. My baby is as well. Stop it.
We're sorry.
Right? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down the properties, not using our notes, and then we're going to check them from our notes and see how we do. Is everybody ready? What is this first shape? So what should we write above it? Let's write that.
like it is a square.
We're not doing it, taters. I can shut this review down real quick.
Your son's gonna go in the class. I hate haters.
Now, what is the first thing one of us knows about rectangles? Raise your hand, I'll scream it out. Justin.
That's a congruent side.
2 sets of congruent sides. Let's write that down. Take a point. Now, do we need to draw what that means on here? Would that help any of us?
Yes.
Now, what does it mean if our sides are congruent? What should we use? Tickies. And then what do we use on the top?
2.
Now, what does it mean if they're congruent? They're equal, they're the same, right? So if this left side is 22, what's my right side?
22.
And if my top side is 4,753, what's my bottom side? Look at us go. Okay, What else do we know? Travis! All four angles are 90 degrees. Take a point. So what should we draw, babies? You got so excited too when you said that. We're not ready yet. Just a second. Alright, so Slytherin's answered one. Durmstrang's answered one. Ravenclaw, y'all want to answer one? Tell me.
I'll tell you what.
Boy, what we doing?
Two sets of sides are parallel.
Oh, yeah.
Opposite sides are parallel. Fantastic. Take a point.
I was so ready.
I was gonna say that.
No, bro. I was waiting for him to call me.
Were you, bro?
Yeah, I froze up. Yeah, bro.
Karen, please stop saying bro.
Please.
Last one I said.
He knows what
You're gonna take the next one? Okay, give me just a second. What do we use to mark that they are parallel? The arrows. Good. We're gonna put how many on the top? Let's put 2 since we have 2 tickies. And then what are we gonna put on the left and right? 1. All right, Hufflepuff's taking the next one. Is everybody ready, or does anybody need a mo? A mo? Okay, of course. All right, Hufflepuff, we ready for you?
Congruent diagonal.
Congruent diagonals. Love it. Take a point. Should we draw those? Let's do it. With a straight edge, for the love. Now, we need to kind of pick up the pace because we need to do this for all of them, right?
I have a straight edge in my mind. Good job.
Now, before we put our tickies on this, Gryffindor or Beauxbatons, can you tell us one more thing about diagonals so we have the right tickies?
opposite.
We said that.
Big guys.
You're getting there, Kaylin, but what? We know that they're congruent, but what else do they do? They bisect. Good. Take a point.
Okay, I said that.
Okay, then say it louder with more confidence.
Okay, sorry.
Diagonals bisect each other. What do they not bisect? They do not bisect the angles. Take a point. Let's make a note in red or something that says they do not bisect the angles. Because that's a rule. They don't on this. Math.
Wait, so by bisecting angles, I mean like, so where it cuts it in half in the bottom? That
Correct.
They wouldn't split it into 2 different.
It splits it into 2 different angles, but it does not split it into 2 congruent angles. That's the difference. And that's what we've been trying to do.
I don't think that's a thing of math. It's the math rabbi everything.
Yes, it is the math rabbi.
I want you to do this.
Okay. Now that we know that, how many tickies should we put on each half of our diagonal? 3. Okay. How do we feel?
Why is there 3 tickies on each of them instead of like 2 on 2 and 1 on 1?
Because they're all congruent since they bisect each other. So, and we also said that the diagonals are congruent, right? So that means that this slanted one and this one are congruent for the whole part. And since they bisect, they cut each other in half, and that means the halves are also congruent. That's a good question. All right, are we ready to move on to rhombi? Curtis. All right, those of us that are ready to move on to rhombus, right? Rhombus beside this one. It's singular, so it's a rhombus. All right, what do we know about a rhombus? Bo Bad needs to start this one because they didn't tell us anything on the last. Well, you did, but we're going to be forceful this time.
All the sides are congruent.
All sides are congruent. Take a point. I just drew a line that so I know where it's going. All sides congruent. So what do I need to put on each of my sides? Tickies. All right, raise your hand if you know something else about a rhombus. Travis. Yes. Thank you. Take a point. I can write it. I just can't say it. All right. Diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles.
Yes.
Opposite angles. I'm just going to write OPP. Are you down with OPP?
No.
Other people's property.
No trespass. I have a no trespass.
All right, now, what does that mean? How many, if I have one rainbow here, how many should I put on the top right?
One.
Because we know that opposite angles are congruent, which we're going to add in a second since we didn't draw the diagonals. I'm super sorry. Curtis, I'm going to let you have the one. You get the point for opposite angles are congruent, okay?
I got another one.
I got excited. Now, should we draw our diagonals?
Yeah.
Draw your diagonals. Oh, Blair.
Sometimes I imagine what happened if I was a teacher. I'd be such a bad teacher.
Why do you think that?
I'd be too relaxed or something like this.
I don't think so. I think you'd be good. You do well when you help people.
I hit him a little bit. You don't want.
Okay, now we know that all sides are congruent. Diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles, and we know that opposite angles are congruent. Are the diagonals congruent on a rhombus?
No.
No, they are not. Diagonals are not congruent. Do they bisect each other? Yes. So diagonals bisect each other.
Should we put a note underneath this one saying that the angles do get bisected on this one?
We did. Diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles.
Oh,
We put that on, yeah?
Wouldn't it
I
only
thought we
be
put it on
bisect?
the bottom.
No. But I like that you noticed that so that we can make sure we put it. Now, how many tickies should I put on this top left diagonal? 2, because it's not congruent to my side, right? And then on my bottom right? 2. My bottom left?
3.
And top right?
There's no right angles.
There are no right angles.
Yeah.
What do we know about consecutive angles?
They're separate.
They're supplementary. Good, let's write that.
I like it.
One day I will learn that I don't have to write so big because it zooms in.
Yeah, I really think too.
I'm glad I'm not alone. Is there anything else that could help us, or are we good? Drake?
Doesn't when the diagonals bisect make a 90-degree angle?
Yes. Take a point.
Good job, Trey.
Where am I going to put this? I'm going to put it right here. Diagonals intersect at a 90. Or diagonals are perpendicular, right? We could say that and that'd be shorter. Good. Diagonals are perpendicular. So what kind of symbol do we use for that?
Square.
A box, a square. Awesome.
Wait,
Yes?
so, but what does that mean, 90?
Yes?
Or you just said there were no 90?
On these angles.
Oh, okay.
There is in the middle. But these angles are not 90.
Okay.
So all four of them are 90s, right?
Yes. We could put a big box.
It's so confused me because I thought the angles were congruent, but then it says that they're already 90.
All right. Now, you know your little half sheets? Let's look at the rectangle together. And then we're going to come back to this. Or maybe I'll put a video of these up tonight. All right, so this says, and ours are all different, okay? But the first one should start off with a measure of angle ABD. Does everybody's first one on rectangle start off with ABD? What does y'all start off with?
Find the value of y.
Okay, does your bottom one say ABD?
No, CDBD.
Well, that's still an angle, right? Okay. Yours says CBD?
CDB.
CDB? Let me see it. Oh, it's going to give us the same thing. We're still going to be doing the same thing. You're just highlighting a different angle than me. Okay? So find the one that talks about angles and highlight your angle. And remember to use your measurements. Now, if you want to watch me do mine before you do yours, we can do that. But I have angle ABD and CBD. Right, we just talked about that. It's the bottom.
Which one?
The bottom.
Okay.
Jesus, take the wheel. Now, I know that what is the entire angle be?
90.
It's 90. So what am I going to do with my yellow and my blue part? If I put those together, they create a 90-degree angle. And putting together means what mathematical operation? Addition. So I'm going to say 1/2 times 4x plus 6 plus 1/2 times 6x plus 14 equals 90. And this time I get to use 90 because it's an angle. If you have sides, are you going to set it equal to 90? No, because sides are congruent. They're not congruent to 90. Now, 1/2 of 4x plus 6 is 2x plus 3 plus 3x plus 7 equals 90, and then I would finish working it out. For my bottom one, which is a different problem, blessings, this tells me that I have AE correct, and BD. Now, what do I know about AE? It's half of the diagonal. So if this is 2y, Blair, what does that mean for DE? And what does that mean for BE? And I also know that that whole thing is 60. So what would I do with these two parts? Add them together and set it equal to 60. Now look at your rectangle, and if you need help on your rectangle, raise your hand. But you should be able to do this based on what we just talked about. So look at it and read it for a second and try to do it without me, and then raise your hand if you need help. Yes. Okay. Nope, you do the same thing I did. Because look at what part it gives you, right? It gives you as you walk out, you're going to get a study guide from me. Keep all of this with you. I'm going to post a video of the other two tonight. Can somebody please hit pause on the thingy? You make it raise up and then hit pause. If you need help, come to 0 period mañana. No.
Oh, no.
Right here. Right here. You can do it.
No.
You can do it.